Hello, my name is Richard Corbett from emergebydesign.net, and welcome to my weekly transit report starting on Monday, November 25th through Sunday, December 1st. So we are in the last week of this lunar cycle. We're actually going to have our next new moon in Sagittarius at 11:21 p.m. Mountain Time on Saturday, December 30th. So it's actually the new moon will be at 1:21 a.m. if you're on the East Coast. So it could be November 30th or December 1st, depending on your location. But what I want to share about this, just to sort of set the stage for where we are right now in this lunation, we're in the final week of it. Brandy Jordan and I did our third quarter moon report just this last Friday. And we've done one for each lunation this cycle. So for the new moon that we had in Scorpio, the first quarter, the full moon, and the third quarter, they're all there if you want to go back and watch the in detail report. But just to summarize, this lunation has been powerful. And to some, it may have felt very overwhelming. We started with the new moon in Scorpio, which is co-ruled by the planets Mars and Pluto, a couple of heavy hitters. And at the time of that new moon, they were in direct opposition to each other. Pluto at the very end of Capricorn in gate 60, opposite Mars in gate 56 in Leo. And those two co-rulers in opposition was really giving this symbolism of power to truth or truth to power or vice versa, lack of power to truth or lack of truth to power. Very hard to say. It's in Scorpio, fixed water. It was the deep within the deep, but it was certainly indicating that it was going to be a very powerful lunation at a very deep core level. During this lunar cycle, we've had a lot of individual gates activated. As I mentioned, we've had Pluto in gate 60, the gate of limitation, in the body graph, part of the channel of mutation. And we also have Uranus in gate 8, the gate of contribution, individual contribution. And we also had the full moon in gate 23, line 6, another individual gate. So I'm mentioning all this just to remind us that we were being affected by plutonic powers at a very deep core level about who I am individually and how do I handle the overwhelm of the world right now. We had the U.S. presidential elections. We've got some tremendous conflicts across the globe. And I just want to acknowledge that for many, this may have felt almost too much. But I want to encourage that the charts are showing the symbolism that there is great power for your individual truth. In spite of what's happening in the external, noisy, confusing, confrontational world. Or actually, as a result of what's happening out there, the charts are indicating we can go inward right now and continue to tap into and access our most authentic truth. But if it has been a challenge, I have some good news. There are some positive aspects we're going to take a look at this week. Having just had the third quarter moon, this is a wonderful time to take some rest, to do some self-nourishing, whatever you can do to go into sort of a recuperation phase in these final days leading up to the next new moon, and looking back and again reflecting on what was shown to you. We're dealing with Pluto, the Lord of the underworld. And whenever he's involved in such a significant way as he was not only at the new moon, but also he entered Aquarius on November 19th during this lunation. And when Pluto's involved like this, what it's offering us is the potential to see the shadows, to have a conversation with our own personal shadows and understand and reframe the stories and the past from which they have come. And so I really felt like this entire cycle was about dealing with our shadows, healing on the inside, and finding how we can alchemize those challenging experiences into a great gift that we can share with others. And so I think that was the message of the cycle. And now we're at the end of that, to use some time to contemplate or meditate and to really connect with how can we take what we've gone through and again, alchemize it, forge it, use it to turn it into a strength to propel us into our greatest vision. And I say that because this new moon coming up this weekend will be in Sagittarius. There is opportunity for great optimism, to have visionary ideals about, yes, I may have been through this in the past. I have worked and grappled with that through this cycle, through whatever has come up, through altercations or challenges, probably or possibly issues with the body. If you've had health issues reemerge that maybe have been from the past and they came back again to sort of bite us in the tail, to really tune into our bodies right now. They may be speaking to us in very powerful ways, yet we have the winds at our back to actually address these issues, whatever they may be, whether they're physical, relationships, wherever they're showing up in our lives right now. They have very powerful messages that Pluto, the Lord of the underworld, and the planet of truth and transformation is offering us right now. So in that regard, I do find it to be a very powerful mutative cycle that we're going to be wrapping up this week. So let's go ahead and take a look at the day by day, some of the aspects that are going on each day. And let me get us there. Okay, so here we are for Monday, November 25th. All of these charts, the body graph and the astrological wheel, are all run for noon Mountain Time each day, except for the new moon, which is taking place on November 30th. That one will be run. The chart will be for the exact minute of that new moon. So as we start off this week, we can see that the sun is still in gate 34, line 5 in Sagittarius, approaching that next new moon cycle, putting the Earth in its polarity in gate 20, line 5. And this is one of the channels in the body graph that is formed by an opposition. There are 3, and this is one of them. It's called the channel of charisma, a design where thoughts must become deeds. So when I think about, again, the message of this lunar cycle, going into our own personal underworld, grappling and being challenged by the shadows that we have in certain spaces of our life, the symbolism here this final week is that to have the courage and conviction of gate 34, the gate of power, to stand up with charisma to express our own individual, mutative, powerful truth. And that really kicks off the week here on Monday with that overriding message and frequency from the sun, the life force energy. Additionally, one of the very positive aspects I'm happy to point out this week is that we have the sun over here in gate 34, 3 degrees of Sagittarius, is moving into a trine with Mars in gate 31, line 4, and that both the sun and Mars are moving into a trine with the North Node in gate 17. And over the next couple of days, they'll be forming a sextile with the South Node as well. And also on Monday through Tuesday, the moon will be crossing a conjunction with the South Node and the nodal axis. So we have this very positive, supportive, communicative frequency between the life force energy of the sun, the power and aggression, sometimes immature, but very powerful, willful energy of Mars, lining up with the nodal axis, our direction forward. And so there's definitely energy here, even though we may have felt a bit beaten down, worn out, emotionally distraught throughout this lunar cycle. At some point, we're closing it out with a very strong energy to move forward, to really define. And this is what I think is so helpful right now, to do those deep contemplations on what is my message right now? What do I want to present to the world? What is my personal inspiration and purpose? And so this has been a great lunar cycle for that. And again, as we're going to close out this week, we have this very dynamic energy. Now, this formation I have just described is really going to be strong and in effect throughout the first half of this week. I want to think about this Mars in Leo, right, in his fire sign, in gate 31, this gate of influence. Now, as a collective frequency, this can be, again, very noisy in the news or the media, everyone telling us which way we need to be going. We got the North Node and the gate of opinion. So there's a lot of outside noise. But I think if we approach this from a personal perspective, there's real energy to pick ourselves up and take some strong steps forward in our mission, in our purpose, however this may resonate with you. This is a powerful week for that. And we're kicking it off with this very dynamic illustration from these planets in their lineup right now. Again, to bring up Pluto, which has been such a mainframe of my last few reports, Pluto has moved into Aquarius. We are in a new chapter with the world of Pluto. Now, he's still in gate 60, line 4, which is called the line of resourcefulness. We have allies, we have friends in this mission, and they are here to help support us overcome these limitations. Whatever these fear, doubt, or insecurities that may have been nagging us for a long time, again, we're getting this symbolism right here to step into our future, to move forward with confidence, Leo confidence, and the optimism of the sun and Sagittarius in that 34, that we can really take steps forward. Now, we are in the final week, and of course, it's the waxing phase of waning phase of the lunar cycle. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's a wonderful time to start a new project or whatever. We always want to follow our personal authority in all decision making from our human design body graph, where each of us has our personal authority. But in terms of a frequency, this is about just maybe making a plan right now. And, you know, this last week of any lunar phase is a wonderful time to tend to the garden of our inner soul, to check our boundaries, check our resources, as we develop whatever plans or ideas about the future. There's wonderful energy right now to collect ourselves, to make intentions as we approach the next lunar cycle with that Jupiter-ruled Sagittarian energy that we're going to have for the next lunar cycle. So a really wonderful time to appreciate ourselves for what we've gone through this month, give ourselves a hug, spend some time in nature to really connect with what is important to each of us right now, and value ourselves and what important messages we may have received and what we've learned this lunar cycle. So that's kicking off the week on Monday. Go ahead and move it into Tuesday here. And you'll see how that trine between Mars and the sun and the north node there, which includes, of course, the south node. So it looks like what we call a kite. It's all in very supportive aspects. So as I mentioned, that frequency is really carrying us through over half the week here. Now, the thing that also happened on Monday, and it happened, let's see, in the evening on Monday, Mercury turned retrograde at 7:43 p.m. Mountain Time. So that happened in gate 26. And at the time of this Tuesday chart at noon, Mercury has moved back already to gate 11 line, or I'm sorry, he's retrograde in this gate 11 line 1. Now, this is the gate of ideas in Sagittarius. And Mercury, a few days back, had already formed its first opposition to Jupiter in gate 45 down in Gemini there. And so Mercury is going to be moving backwards, and eventually in a few days, again, I'll talk about that when we get to it, Mercury will form that second opposition with Jupiter. Now, Mercury retrograde, it happens 3 to 4 times a year for around 3 weeks. Mercury will not turn forward again until December 6th. And so they're very regular. They often get a bad rap in pop astrology, like, oh, Mercury's in retrograde, don't talk to anyone, don't sign a contract. There is some element of truth to these phrases about Mercury in retrograde, but I really value when Mercury is in retrograde. Mercury is the planet of our intellect, our communication. Mercury is always nearby the sun, never more than 30 degrees away from the sun's position. And he's always there to help integrate our intellect with our life force energy. So he serves an incredibly valuable role, whether he's forward or backward. But when he is moving in retrograde, it does lend this element where it's a wonderful time to review, to reflect, to pause sometimes before we speak, Now he's in the sign of Sagittarius, which is actually his detriment, and so that adds a little bit of extra challenge to this particular retrograde. He's not extremely comfortable there. Mercury rules the sign of Gemini, opposite Sagittarius. So when he's in Sagittarius, this is where communication can be a little bombastic, right? It can be a little over the top, a little too much exaggeration, and we may absolutely see that again out there in the collective media. But with retrograde, this is, again, a wonderful time to review and reflect. And here in Gate 11, I would be reviewing what are my Gate 11 ideas and visions about my future. We can really sink into that, to take our time with that, maybe do some wild mind writing or some vision board activity. This would be really supportive Mercury retrograde for those types of activities. So there'll be much more to say each week about his movement backwards, but currently in that Gate 11. And also on Tuesday, Venus over here in Capricorn, it's 17 degrees Capricorn, and in Gate 54 in the root center called the Gate of Ambition, Mercury is forming a quincunx with Jupiter in Gate 45, line 1. Now, whenever we have Venus and Jupiter in aspect, they are the two benefics. They're really here to support us, generally in very good ways. Venus being the planet of what we want, our morals and values and passions and desires. Jupiter, the planet of expansion. So even when they're in a challenging aspect, like a quincunx, there's still a good frequency here. I mean, anytime they line up, these are a couple of planets that really want the best from us at all the times. And so here, but it is a quincunx. Quincunx can be a little bit fuzzy, a little bit confusing. But what I'm seeing here is that Venus, with this root pressure to have ambition to move up, to transform our communities, lining up with in this quincunx with Jupiter, the planet of expansion, in the gate of gathering together, this gate of leadership within the tribe. And so I just feel that there's this tribal quality to this energy, and again, relying on our allies, whatever our personal authenticity is, and our Uranus Gate 8 Uranian individual inspired contribution, that it's going to involve other people to some degree. And so I think there's an opportunity here through communication, careful communication with Mercury in retrograde, to have these conversations, sharing with friends or family, this is what I've been through. This is what I think I've learned and grown and healed. And this is my new vision for the future. There can be great ambition in that, and it can be communicated well with our community and our allies of how they may support us with that. And again, just to keep mentioning these first few days of the week with that sun trining Mars, and it'll be exact tomorrow on Wednesday, the 27th. But this is some really powerful energy operating in a smooth, supportive trine to again contemplate or communicate or to share with our allies what this next vision is for the next step in our phase of life. So that's what's happening on Tuesday. And anything else I wanted to mention there? One other thing is that the sun at that 4 degrees Sagittarius is forming a square and a half with Chiron. Now, Chiron is in Gate 51, line 5. Chiron is moved all the way back to 51, line 5, where he will eventually turn forward. So he's not going to go back to any other line numbers. And this is the gate of shock. Chiron doesn't get an activation in the body graph, but it would be right here in Gate 51, part of this channel of initiation. And this has had a long story. I've covered this clear back to last April when we had the total solar eclipse in Gate 51, line 5. So this may, whatever this new vision and story, if you think back to last spring, there may be some resonance there. But what I'm feeling here with this powerful Sun-Mars trine that's lined up in positive aspects with the nodal aspects, and it's speaking again towards this, what is this vision for me going forward? It's connected to Chiron, the wounded healer. And his shock or this initiation from wherever that comes from our past, it's part of our story. You know, the chironic wound that we all have is something that eventually, through self-healing, self-development, going through cathartic healing processes that can bring us to the other side, so to speak, it becomes like scars on our skin. We're tough but soft. We are strong in our vulnerability. We are humbled by the experience, but it brings us to a newfound truth and realization of how we can move forward with greater strength. So on Tuesday, as we have this supportive, powerful energy to move us into the future when we get to the next new moon, Chiron's still involved here. And we're still feeling the twinges of how hard it can be to let some of these things from our past go. How hard it can be sometimes to forgive ourselves, or particularly to forgive the other people involved. It's a big ask. It's a big step, but so cathartic for our healing process. So while we have a lot of this positive Mars Sun energy on the nodal path to make this movement, we may still be feeling the tinges of the challenges of it's not an easy thing to forgive and to forget and to move forward and to see the benefits of those prior limitations, thinking of Pluto in that gate 60. But they happen for a reason, and there's a gift in them. And I think that's part of the real message of this week as we close out this incredibly powerful lunation. How do we alchemize that limitation and turn it into an individual strength of our expression? So let's go ahead and move it into Wednesday. Okay, and here on Wednesday, we can see on Wednesday that Sun trining Mars, they're both at 5 degrees. So this is going to be exact. Let's see, just a little bit after this noontime chart. They're just a couple of minutes from the exact trine. So this is really the zenith of that energy that I've been talking about since the Monday chart. I feel that is so supportive right now. And to remind that Mercury in retrograde, it's moved into gate 26, which is the gate of the egoist in the heart center. Mercury is again a little challenged here, but I think it's important to listen to our stories. Right? How are we talking about these experiences from our past? Because as we grow and develop and heal from them, our stories need to change as well. And our stories need to match our healing process. So I think that's important to keep in mind with Mercury. Venus is also moving into, so Venus still being in gate 54, line 5, is moving into a square with that Chiron at 19 degrees Aries. And again, that was gate 51, line 5. So this will happen. We'll be feeling it on Wednesday through Thursday when that square will be exact. That, again, Chiron's involved with this story. And when I think about the shock of Chiron in gate 51 and the beauty and harmony of Venus in the gate of ambition, this is why I'm indicating that chironic wound story is tied to our ambition. Whatever this newfound truth of inspiration of where we are at this point in our life, it's tied to that story. And that's why the healing process, so that we can move forward with this new story with our highest frequency, is important. And so I think we're really feeling that. We can see, that we have a grand trine between Sun, Mars, and the North Node. This powerful step in the right direction for our future is going to incorporate what we've learned through our own personal hero's journey that Chiron offers us. So let's go ahead and we'll move this into I also needed to mention, sorry, I didn't mention yet, but on Wednesday, the Sun in Sagittarius has left gate 34 and moved into gate 9, called the gate of focus. This is down here in the sacral center. And this puts the Earth and the polarity in gate 16, the gate of skills. And so I really appreciated when I was putting these charts together, again, to think about these last 3 days of this powerful plutonic lunar cycle, that the sun is offering his life force energy in the gate of focus. Again, this lends it to the story that I feel is being told right now is, okay, all that stuff happened, and it may have been messy and terrible and hurtful and certainly emotional, but we have the energy to alchemize that experience into something that it can move us forward in our truth. And the sun is offering its energy to focus on what this plan is as we're doing our contemplations, meditations, and looking forward to this new moon over the weekend. We have the focus to do that. And the earth bringing its grounding qualities into Mother Gaia is the skills. Gate 16. How could we do this in a skillful way? And so it just feels such a beautiful, supportive ending to this lunar cycle to use our highest mind here or our highest inspiration, I think, thinking about that Uranus still in gate 8. And with that Mars that I keep talking about in gate 31, right? What would be our influence? If we could take away any limitation, no obstacles, make it anything you want, how would we be influential in a mature Mars way? How would we do that? And the sun is saying, okay, let's focus on that. Let's meditate on that. Let's feel the feeling of what that space that we want to be in, what would it feel like? So I just find this to be, really, really sweet closing to a challenging lunar cycle. So let's go ahead. Move this into Thursday. And here we can see the sun is now moved into line 2 of gate 9. Now the moon has moved into Scorpio. And I think what's important here, as we wrap up Thursday and Friday leading into the new moon, the moon is going to be traveling through Scorpio for about 2.5 days as she does each sign. And she's moving through Scorpio by herself. There's no other planets there right now. But this is where we started this new moon in Scorpio of the cycle we're in. And so I think it still has this emotional quality. If you're still feeling that, this could be a wonderful time to sit with those deep, uh, deep scorpionic emotions as she's moving through here to, again, really offer the space and the nurturing to express these emotions, to really reflect on this month. I think the moon is very supportive in regards to that. Now, she is bringing us the channel of surrender, a design of a transmitter in the body graph, because we have Venus. I'm sorry, we have Mercury in Sagittarius in gate 26. And so when the moon moves through gate 44 for this middle part of the day, we're going to have the channel of the transmitter. So again, tribal, wonderful time to connect with our friends and community and allies to talk about things, share our experiences from the month, talk about what's been so deeply stimulated at our core level and what we may want to do with that. How we can reframe the challenge into an opportunity. How do we grow and develop and move forward in this optimistic Sagittarian life force energy that we're existing in right now? So yeah, I just want to mention for these next couple days with that moon traveling through Scorpio, to allow whatever is effervescing in our body to let it out, to listen. She is speaking to us with the information that we need to recognize, to be aware of, to accept it, to contemplate it, and to use it as a strength as we move forward. And let's see, that's okay. Let's go ahead and move it into Friday, the 29th. And see, again, the moon's still traveling through the sign of Scorpio right now. And at this noontime chart, the moon is currently in gate 43, the gate of insights. Again, this is Scorpio. These are deep, fixed water, breakthrough insights. The moon will be forming a sextile with Venus. They're both at 21 degrees, and Venus has moved into gate 61. So as I'm sharing and we're feeling what we're feeling and reflecting and meditating on this emotional period, Venus, the planet that represents what we want, is in gate 61 at this chart, the gate of inner truth in an individual channel. Um, and with that moon in 43, an individual channel, Uranus still in gate 8, individual, Pluto, gate 60, still individual. We just are still being affected at this deep core level. But on Friday, one day before the next new moon, I just see so much support to connect with and contemplate with what is my inner truth? Why am I here in this incredibly chaotic world that does have so much trauma and challenge and confrontation right now? But what is my voice amidst that? And that is important because we can as we raise our frequency, we do change the planet. We change our biosphere that we live in. And so I think that's the symbolism here. And there's, again, just incredibly supportive deep dives into these questions for ourselves. I really like some of these aspects that we're seeing here as we wrap up this final few days, or actually the final day of this lunar cycle. So let's go ahead and move it to Saturday. Now, this is the only chart that is not at noon Mountain Time. This is for the exact minute of the new moon in Sagittarius, which is 11:21 p.m. on November 30th. As I mentioned earlier, if you're on an Eastern time zone or farther, this will actually be on December 1st. So a new moon in Sagittarius, this is a lunar cycle of growth and optimism and expansion. It's ruled by Jupiter. And as we look at the chart, we can see that Mercury, not super close, but still in the sign of Sagittarius to the new moon. Mercury is still in that gate 26 I mentioned earlier, how we might use our willpower to communicate what this optimism of our future and our inner truth is about. Mercury is now it's moving retrograde, but it's moving into a trine to that Chiron I've been talking about. So this is where I'm sharing that, this new message of our growth and expansion of this lunar cycle is connected to our personal story of limitation and wounding, and how we can have been initiated and invited to move beyond that. And so I think that's a very important part to this lunar cycle. Will be Mercury in retrograde, a bit challenged in communication, so remaining reserved and calm in our communication, using it as a time to reflect, review, and revise our personal story regarding our hero's journey. But it is part of the story. It can be the fuel for this next step in your passionate endeavor. And we also can see that Venus, in that gate 26 line 4, is forming a trine to Uranus, still in Taurus, in gate 8 line 1. This is, as I mentioned, the gate of contribution. The line itself in the Ravi Ching is called the line of honesty. It's the foundation of personal inspiration and how we contribute that to larger group goals. It's in the foundational line of honesty. It's about being honest all the time, which is not easy. I can share. I have plenty of personal stories about growth and development where, as a Libra, I often was a people pleaser and just trying to not rock the boat and not always speaking my truth. That's just my personal example. But I think the message I'm sharing about the chart here is it's about us being honest with our vulnerability, with our pain, with the suffering we've been through, and sharing that in an authentic way. With this new moon in Sagittarius, which is so optimistic and visionary and what's possible for our future. So I'm really excited about what may come from the next lunar cycle. Brandy Jordan and I will be doing another deep dive. So I'm not going to say a whole lot more about it in this report. We'll go through all of the planets and all of the gates and lines in a few days when we release our new moon in Sagittarius report at emergebydesign.net. But I do want to say, and actually, before I wrap it up, I just want to move to the Sunday chart. There's actually not a whole lot of new aspects I want to share on the Sunday new time chart. Again, this chart is only about 12 and a half hours from the new moon chart. And so you can see that very little has actually changed in the chart. So I'm going to wrap up the charts here. and I want to stop my share and just close with a few words. Again, about how much I would encourage you to have self-appreciation. There's no getting around it. This was one of the most powerful lunar cycles of this year. And if you've made it through it, I give yourself a hug, give yourself a pat on the back. Really formative week and a supportive week to reflect on the details. What has come to light that we weren't looking at? This is that plutonic shadow work where things that under our own personal underworld was in view. It was accessible. And so there's so much that we can glean from that and apply to our personal inner core truth and inspiration of what our next visionary story is, where we're going in our personal path of life. So I really think it's been a possibly a challenging time. Now, when I do these reports, of course, I'm talking about the astrological weather, which is the same for everyone on the planet, but it affects each of us differently, right? Based on our personal life and story, and particularly our own chart. And so I always say it's like when a weather system passes through your town, if it's a big thunderstorm, some people and the next neighborhood over may have flooding, and yet your house may only get some wind and light rain. I mean, these transits are affecting us very individually. And if you would like support or a consultation with me to look at your chart in regards to what's going on, please reach out to me at emergebydesign.net. I'd love to do that with you. But overall, the weather is the same, and the weather has been challenging. It again has been very deep, plutonic, and emotional. And so I just want to support you. I want to encourage you to appreciate what you've gone through, to find the kernel of truth, to find the silver lining that everything happened the way it did, and yet in regards to that, there's benefit to you. There's something that is percolating your own mutational, transformational process. And to think about this week, again, the vision board, some wild mind writing about what could be possible as we prepare for that next new moon in Sagittarius. And so I just want to thank you so much for listening. If you got some value out of this, always appreciate a like or a subscribe. We'd love to have you part of our community. And I look forward to seeing you all again at our next new moon in Sagittarius report. Thank you so much. Bye for now.